He's only been in office for 6 weeks. Seems like 6 years, doesn't it? And he's been going around with his cronies touting his so-called landslide and blowout win. But he won the popular vote by 1.5%, one of the smallest ever, and he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
It is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. That's an excuse for you to say, what we did really wasn't that bad.
Some people didn't
we should continue to do that. No, don't continue to do it. Find a new strategy.
Have you ever watched someone who usually breaks down sports suddenly step into politics and completely humiliate a panel of talking heads in the process? That's exactly what happened when Stephen A. Smith went on the offensive against The View hosts, and it was nothing short of brutal. He didn't just disagree with them, he exposed the blind spots, contradictions, and biases that most Americans have been noticing for years. The View hosts love to paint the Republican Party as some extreme fringe group, but Stephen A. Smith wasn't having it. He argued that Republicans aren't driving the extremes. They're reacting to a Democratic Party hijacked by radical voices obsessed with identity politics.
And in this particular case, the Republicans were right.
So you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm a social liberal. I'm fiscal with my dollars. I ain't apologizing for not wanting to pay high taxes to anybody. I'm not apologizing for that, right? But outside of that, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live.
And when he said it, you could almost hear the host scrambling for a response. Smith's point was simple but piercing. Most Americans aren't living on the fringes. They just want common sense leadership. What made this clash even more remarkable is that Stephen A. isn't a career politician. He's a sports commentator, but he gets the pulse of America. He explained that he's a fiscal conservative. He doesn't want high taxes, but socially, he's liberal. Live and let live. And that's exactly where most Americans are. People don't want to be lectured on pronouns while struggling to pay bills or put food on the table. Yet the View hosts kept framing these cultural debates as urgent, as if they define the nation.
The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate. We can sit up there and play around all we want to. In 2020, Trump didn't win the popular vote. He didn't win the electoral college vote. A matter of fact, the Republicans hadn't won the popular vote, if I remember correctly, since 2004. But they did this year. So 20 years after they last won the popular vote, they won the popular vote. They won the electoral college vote. The man won every swing state. And on top of it all, 89% of the counties shifted against. I don't understand how people can look at that and say, there's no mandate. There's a mandate.
Well, it's a different definition of a mandate, I guess.
But the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3%, and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say, what we did really wasn't that bad.
Some people didn't
we should continue to do that. No, don't continue to do it. Find a new strategy.
Smith didn't hold back. He pointed out that while the View hosts were obsessed with fringe social issues, bathroom debates, pronouns, biological men and women's sports, the majority of Americans were silently frustrated. They were working 2 jobs, stuck in traffic, buying groceries that seemed to double in price, and trying to keep their families safe. Do they have time to analyze every detail of woke politics? Smith asked. Absolutely not. And honestly, they shouldn't have to. And then came Kamala Harris. The View hosts have repeatedly defended her, painting her as a rising star and symbol of progress, but Smith tore through that narrative. Harris didn't win primaries. She was placed on the ticket, she avoided tough interviews, leaned heavily into woke ideology, and failed at key assignments like border management. Stephen A. highlighted the reality: voters aren't rejecting women. They're rejecting weak leadership.
I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay? But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that.
These are less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
but you know what? Add Aaron
ridiculous.
in the NFL.
But see, but I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah.
You're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
But
that
means they don't have the information.
Okay, but 90% of the voters don't have the information.
And the hosts on The View? They were forced to watch as their carefully crafted narrative crumbled under Smith's piercing logic. He didn't stop there. Stephen A. exposed how the Democrats' obsession with wokeness, something The View hosts often defend, alienated the very people they were supposed to serve. While the extreme left cheered, Middle America wanted fairness, stability, and leaders who actually solve problems. Mothers didn't want their daughters sharing bathrooms with biological men. Parents didn't want their children competing in unfair sports competitions. And yet, The View hosts dismissed these concerns as bigotry, a point Smith didn't hesitate to call out. What really landed was Smith's truth bomb. Ideology doesn't win elections. Reality does. The View hosts could lecture on inclusivity, pronouns, or social progress. But Stephen A. reminded viewers that Americans vote with their wallets, their safety, and their trust in leadership. When the average family can't afford groceries or feel secure in their neighborhood, no amount of woke rhetoric can sway them. And it wasn't just commentary, it was a lesson in political strategy.
And he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
It is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts.
Democrats, according to Smith, became prisoners of their own extreme wing. They allowed wokeness to define them, even when it was wildly unpopular. Their silence on overreach looked like endorsement. Republicans, on the other hand, filled the vacuum as the voice of reason. And The View hosts, they were forced to sit through it, unable to counter Smith's relentless logic. In the end, Stephen A. Smith's message was crystal clear. Most Americans are centrists. They just want reasonable, common-sense leadership. Weakness and dishonesty, not gender or progressivism, lose elections. The View hosts may defend ideology, but Smith reminded everyone that voters reward competence, results, and leaders who aren't afraid to face tough questions. So what's the takeaway? Stephen A. Smith didn't just talk politics, he destroyed The View hosts in front of millions. He cut through spin, exposed biases, and delivered a reality check for anyone clinging to extreme narratives. Americans aren't rejecting women, they're rejecting weak leadership and nonsense. Until The View hosts and the Democrats fully grasp that, their arguments might keep falling flat. What do you think? Was Stephen A. Smith spot on in calling out The View hosts and the Democratic obsession with wokeness? Was Kamala Harris ever qualified to lead, or was she destined to stumble? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And if you've made it this far, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that reality always wins.